If you were trapped in a destroyed mining facility at the bottom of the ocean floor, with an army of giant deep-sea creatures trying to eat you and your friends alive, what the hell would you do? These scientists are about to realize that they've accidentally disturbed something that really should have stayed buried, and now they'll have to fight for their very survival if they're ever going to see the light of day again. We're here to break down the mistakes made, what you probably should do, and how to beat the creatures of the abyss in underwater. If you thought that your job was bad, just wait until you see this. Miles below the ocean's surface at the bottom of the Mariana Trench lies the Kepler Station, a state-of-the-art mining facility that's crew has recently been having some trouble with some unexplainable sightings. One night, this mechanical engineer Nora is brushing her teeth when the power throughout the station begins to mysteriously surge on and off. Concerned, she steps out into the hallway to check it out, and that's when she notices water dripping from the ceiling above her. Before she can even react, the walls all around her begin to cave in as the station's hull is suddenly breached, flooding the tunnels with a deadly wall of water that's moving fast. Running for her life, she ends up making it to the control panel with only this guy, Rodrigo, but the key reader is damaged, forcing her to pull open the console and activate the bulkhead doors manually. Just then, she notices several more crewmates making a desperate run towards them, but they aren't going to make it in time, leaving Nora with no choice but to seal the doors at the last possible second. For a moment, it looks like she and Rodrigo are safe until suddenly a massive explosion rocks the entire station, knocking them both off of their feet. When Nora eventually regains consciousness, she finds that the two of them are both still unharmed, although they're severely shaken up. Pulling herself together, Nora picks up the radio and tries contacting their support team back on the surface, but it's too badly damaged for her to get through. That's when they start to hear strange noises echoing throughout the structure that sound like some kind of massive creature is in the water outside. With nowhere else to go, Nora and Rodrigo grab some basic medical supplies and set off back into the tunnels to see who they can find. What up, y'all? Today, I wanted to talk about something that's been on my mind lately. Privacy. Have you ever Googled yourself? It's pretty shocking what you can find out there. I was low-key freaked out when I saw all this information about me available online. My full name, email, even my old home address. It's all out there for anyone to see. This information can be sold to anyone. And I mean anyone. The John Kramers of the world aside, this is where Aura comes in, the sponsor of today's video. Aura seeks out information collected by data brokers and assists with the removal of it from their databases. In fact, Aura helped me get my data scrubbed from over 36 websites, and I'm not even sure how the hell that happened. Cleaning up my information with Aura has been a total game changer. They automatically track down these data brokers and submit opt-out requests on my behalf. This not only reduces spam, but also makes it harder for hackers and phishers to target me. Plus, Aura goes beyond data broker removal. It's like a one-stop shop for online security. I get features like antivirus, a VPN, password management, parental controls, and identity theft insurance all in one place with one affordable price. Think of it as a giant security bubble around your personal data. And I know some of you might already have some of these tools, but trust me, having them all in one place with constant monitoring is a huge advantage. As someone who spends a lot of their time online, like a lot of time, I value my privacy, and I know you do too. That's why I highly recommend checking out Aura. You can head on over to this link to start your 2-week free trial. You can also find the link in the video description below. Even if you're just the least bit curious about your online privacy, check it out. I was ready to call BS, and then I found out that my was out there on the dark web without my permission. So thank you, Aura, for sponsoring today's video, and back to the show. Okay, talk about a rough night at the office. Nora here had to leave her coworkers for dead just to save the rest of the station. And with the amount of damage that the entire facility seems to have sustained, it doesn't look like they'll be safe anytime soon. The reason why a small leak quickly became so dangerous is because, like that song by Queen and David Bowie, the researchers here on the Kepler station are constantly under pressure. Hydrostatic pressure, that is. When talking about the pressure levels at the bottom of the ocean, we use the word hydrostatic, with hydro meaning water, and static meaning at rest. You know, even up here on dry land, we're constantly being pressed down on by the weight of the air around us, being pulled towards the earth by gravity. This is called atmospheric pressure. Yeah, since we live on the surface, our bodies are naturally built to withstand this without us even noticing. But water is 800 times more dense than air. And that's why you wouldn't last for a second if you were exposed to the pressure levels found this far down. We typically measure the intensity of pressure in units such as bars or pounds per square inch. The pressure felt here on the surface is about 1 bar or 14.7 psi. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, with nearly 7 miles of water overhead, we're looking at pressures of about 1,086 bars, or 16,000 psi. That's roughly 1,000 times greater than the pressure at the surface. The effects that sudden exposure to that kind of pressure would have on the human body are incredibly gruesome. But the good news is that you wouldn't notice because your death would be more or less instantaneous. Boom, just like that. In an underwater facility like this, the inside of the structure would need to be kept at similar pressures to what we have on the surface, so that the crew could actually live there. The problem with this is that even a tiny hole in the structure could have catastrophic consequences, like we've just seen here. If the hull were to be breached, water from the outside would immediately come rushing in, causing rapid flooding that could be impossible to contain. But that's not even the worst part. At these depths, the sudden depressurization of the facility would cause the external pressures to squeeze in from all sides, like crushing an empty soda can. This is called an implosion, and it would be impossible for anyone to survive this. Nora and Rodrigo here must have just gotten really lucky, but they better hope that luck doesn't run out because they've still got a long way to go. Now that we know what happened, the next question to ask ourselves is why it happened. After all, an accident this severe probably shouldn't just pop up out of nowhere with no heads up whatsoever for the crew. You see, in a facility like this one, with so many lives and all of that expensive technology on the line, you'd expect for there to be systems in place to prevent this kind of accident from happening. This would involve routine inspections of the hull and structural components to check for any signs of wear, corrosion, or damage. Also, active monitoring of environmental conditions, such as water pressure and temperature, and a regular maintenance schedule to prevent any early warning signs from slipping by unnoticed. With all that being said, whether we're talking about a natural disaster or a workplace incident, there should have been many red flags popping up long before anything this catastrophic went down. This means that either the maintenance guy needs to be fired so hard that his great-great-grandchildren can't get a job, or perhaps the company that built this place is doing something shady. After the accident, Nora and Rodrigo speculate that it could have been an earthquake, but there's a problem with this. It turns out that earthquakes are relatively infrequent this deep down in the Mariana Trench compared to the surrounding area. That's because the extreme water pressure and geological conditions actually help to stabilize the rock formations here, reducing the likelihood of seismic events. Now, while it is possible that the drilling could have caused an earthquake or volcanic eruption by disturbing a geological fault or intersecting with a magma chamber before the station would ever be allowed to undertake such activities, extensive risk assessments and environmental impact studies would need to be made first. It's likely that they'd go to great lengths to avoid causing this kind of environmental disaster in the first place. But maybe the answer could be that they disturbed something else entirely. Perhaps it's connected to those noises that they're hearing outside. And I don't know about you, but I've played enough Subnautica to know that anything making noises like that can't be good. It's always possible that this freak accident was maybe an inside job, and maybe the company has decided to let the station and any witnesses be destroyed so that the public never finds out the truth about what really happened here. If that's the case, then letting them know that you're still alive could actually make things worse. So I'd be careful about trying to communicate with the surface. Although, since it's also their best option to get rescued, it's probably worth it to take the risk. In the meantime, it's probably going to be a while before they can escape or get help, so grabbing medical supplies was a great start. I'd also try to find some kind of portable air supply, just in case the life support systems start to go down. maybe even a flashlight to help you find your way around in case the power suddenly goes out. Oh, and a supply of clean drinking water to keep you hydrated since you don't know how long it's going to be before you're rescued. Now, as they're exploring the station, they need to be careful to watch out for any hazards like flooded hallways and especially exposed electrical wires. Getting out is going to be a lot of work, so I'd try to find and team up with other survivors who can help out with any tasks. They could become competition for vital supplies or a seat in the escape pod though, so it's important to avoid getting emotionally attached to anyone and be ready to cut them loose at a moment's notice. Speaking of escaping, there must be a main line or primary method of transportation that they could use to get from the station to the surface. And I'd start by trying to get there. Otherwise, there are probably smaller submersibles used to scout the surrounding area that she could take up for a ride if she knows how to drive it. Or life rafts or escape pods somewhere in the facility as well. You know, they still have a long way to go, but if they stay calm and focus on survival, then they just might make it out in one piece. The place is in bad shape, with the rest of the walls looking like they could collapse at any moment. Making their way through the rubble, they eventually come to a working computer station where Nora can see that their main elevator back to the surface has been completely destroyed, meaning that their only way out is going to be the escape pods in another part of the facility. They begin moving through one of the collapsed tunnels towards the other side of the station when suddenly, Noah swears that she can faintly hear someone calling out for help. Pulling back the debris, they actually manage to find this guy Paul buried there under the rubble and yank him out, adding a third member to their small squad of survivors. Just as he's getting used to be able to move again, they realize that the only way to the escape pods is through a section of the tunnels that's so tight they'll have to army crawl through on their stomachs. As they continue further in, they come to a spot where they have to pass by the bodies of some of the crew who weren't so lucky. Nora is heartbroken by the sight, but the truth is that maybe they were better off dying quickly compared to what the survivors are about to experience. Okay, this is pretty risky. Let's hope that none of them suffer from a bad case of claustrophobia. Although if they do, then they probably have no business working on an underwater research station in the first place. Am I right? All joking aside, Nora here and her friends need to be more careful about their approach, because they've already survived too much just to screw it up now. They have no way of knowing how close these tunnels are to collapsing, and all three of them piling in there at the same time creates the risk of all three of them getting stuck. Instead, just one of them should have gone first, preferably with a rope attached if they were able to find one so that the others could pull them back in case of any trouble. Then, once they made it through, they could yell to let the others know that it's safe for them to follow. Personally, I would have sent Paul in first, and this might seem unfair, but real cavers actually recommend sending the largest person from the group ahead of the others because if they can fit through something, then you know that the others can too. This way, if anything were to happen, then you still have a smaller person who can fit in there and try to help them out. Plus, Paul owes us one for saving him from a terrible death, so he might not like it, but it looks like this is his time to shine. They need to be extremely careful not to knock anything loose, try their best to avoid touching the ceiling, and watch out for any extra dangerous looking areas. I'd also consider getting rid of any loose-fitting clothing like those jackets that could easily become snagged on the rubble. As the path becomes more narrow, they'll want to only inhale when stopped, and exhale while pushing forward to make themselves as small as possible. For now, they can use handholds and footholds to pull and push themselves along. And if it becomes too cramped, then they can use a caving technique called wriggling, which involves pushing one arm all the way forward while tucking the other alongside your body to snake your way through those extra tight spaces. The key is to stay as relaxed as possible to make your body more pliable and decrease your chances of getting stuck. Easier said than done, I know, but it's not like they have any better options. As we passed by, I'd also want to check those dead bodies for any valuable loot, because they could have a keycard or something on them that might come in handy down the line. With so much already working against them, it's important not to miss any opportunities or take unnecessary risks if they're going to survive. They're finally able to make it to the pod bay, although what they find there isn't exactly what they'd hoped for. All of the escape pods are already gone, with their only commander, Captain Lucien, still there, and he's trying desperately to communicate with the surface. After cleaning her up, the captain sends Nora to the station's control room, where she meets with two more survivors, her crewmates Emily and Liam. As if being trapped in an imploding tin can wasn't bad enough, the facility's cooling towers have all been destroyed, and the nuclear core powering it is becoming more and more unstable. They have less than 30 minutes before the station blows sky high, so the captain decides that their only choice is to use their pressurized diving suits to walk across the ocean floor until they reach the Roebuck, which is a drilling platform that should have its own escape pods. The route is incredibly risky, but it's their only shot at ever seeing the surface again, so they follow the captain's lead and start suiting up. Once they're all ready, they head for the staging area, where Liam and Paul stop to grab the two high-powered nail guns as weapons, just in case they run into any trouble out there. With only minutes left until the entire station is destroyed, the group gathers together and takes the elevator down to the exit, but it isn't long before the whole plan starts to fall apart. They quickly realize that the exterior hatch is severely damaged, which means that when they open the doors, the pressure is going to hit them like a brick wall. Everyone should still be alright as long as their suits hold up, but just then, Rodrigo's mask begins to crack from the increasing pressure. Realizing what's about to happen, Nora shouts for them to keep the door closed, but it's too late. As the wall of pressure rushes in, Rodrigo's suit suddenly implodes, killing him instantly and causing a shockwave that blasts the others back several feet. That makes one down with 5 more to go. Nora and the others are in a complete state of shock, but there's nothing that they can do besides keep pushing forward for their own survival. When they finally reach the cargo elevator, they're forced to make a pretty sketchy freefall down several stories to land on its roof, but luckily they all manage to make the jump and get inside. It's a long ride down to the bottom, but before they're even finished talking about what happened to Rodrigo, the alarm suddenly begins to sound. They're picking up something on one of the decks about halfway down the tower, and the captain thinks that it could be a distress signal from an escape pod that never made it to the surface. Someone needs to check it out, so they send Paul and Liam to go search for the pod and any sign of survivors, but that was their biggest mistake. While Nora and the others are watching over the cameras, the two of them head out into the pitch black water. Finally, they end up finding the pod, but it's completely destroyed as if it was torn apart. What's even stranger is that it's covered in a bizarre kind of algae. And sure enough, they find the man's body wrapped up in the same stuff just a bit further away. The girls start to get a bad feeling about all of this, so they beg Paul and Liam to just come back to the elevator. But there's something about the body that gets Paul's attention. The man's back is completely torn open, and when Paul leans in for a closer look, a small alien-like creature comes flying out straight at him. Luckily, Liam brought his nail gun, and he's able to take the creature down with a well-placed shot. But what they don't realize is that this is only the beginning of their worst nightmare. The boys head back to the rest of the crew with the creature's body, and it looks like a deep-sea version of the chest burster from Alien. After taking a look at it, their best guess is that it must be an undiscovered species that was living inside of a thermal pocket until the drilling accidentally set it loose. At least it's not moving, but just then, the power suddenly goes out, leaving them stranded in total darkness, and that's when the noises start again. Everyone freezes as they listen to what sounds like something climbing around on the outside of the elevator. At first, nothing happens, but when whatever it is starts pulling on the outer door, they decide that they better seal up their side of the room just in case. Nora manages to release the brakes, but for some reason the elevator still isn't moving down, and that's when they find out exactly why. When they shine their flashlights up towards the window, an adult creature suddenly lunges at them out of the darkness, trying to bite its way through. The glass holds up, but just when they think that it might be gone, the station above them finally goes critical, exploding into a massive blast of energy that knocks the elevator off of its cables and sends them plummeting towards the depths below. Okay, well, it looks like they've officially got some company. I don't know what I'd be more worried about right now, the fact that these creatures are out there, or that these two absolute idiots thought that it would be a great idea to bring one back into the elevator. But one thing's for sure, Paul, Liam, and even Captain Lucian, you all seriously f***ed up. This one's pretty self-explanatory because one look at this creature should tell you everything that you need to know. Let's not forget that these are supposed to be some of the brightest minds that the scientific community has to offer. So I have to ask, what the hell were they thinking when they decided to bring this parasitic abomination right into the only safe place that they have left? No, I'm no mechanical engineer, but I do know what to do if you find something like that. You stomp on it over and over again until it looks like the inside of a jelly donut. I mean, think about the context here. When they found it, it was already eating a dead guy. Then it tried to eat Paul. Clearly, you do not want to bring this thing anywhere near the rest of the crew. It would be better to take some quick selfies with its body and just leave it out in the ocean where it actually belongs. What if it came back to life, escaped to hide somewhere in there, and then grew into an adult version of one of those things? Or even worse, what if it's something's baby, like Paul here said, and eventually Mama decides to come looking? That's a whole can of worms that you do not want to open up, especially when you're already fighting for survival as it is. The only reason for anyone to want to learn more about something like that is to figure out better ways to kill it, and fire usually does the trick, but by bringing it onto the elevator, it already looks like they ended up attracting the attention of something even worse. Personally, I would have been strongly against sending anyone out there in the first place after everything that it took for us to just get this far. Now they all might die because they were trying to save one guy whose odds of being alive were slim to none in the first place. I get that we're trying to save whoever we can here, but when you have to put 5 other people's lives in jeopardy to do it, that kind of defeats the purpose a bit, don't you think? They should have just kept going without a second thought, but now they've gone and brought a baby sea demon into the mix. And it looks like they're about to meet its family. Sorry everyone, but you f***ed up. They make it to their suits and into the decompression chamber just in time as the elevator comes crashing to a stop on the ocean floor. There's still a long way to go before they reach safety, and all that they can do is run for their lives while trying to dodge the huge pieces of the station that start falling down all around them. Grouping up, they make one last push for the nearby access tunnel, where they notice a terrifying shadowy figure watching them just as they finally get inside. Everyone's still alive, but Liam here took a pretty bad hit, and his suit's oxygen supply was damaged in the process. He's in rough shape, but turning back now clearly is not an option, so they all climb onto a little trolley that starts taking them even further towards the drilling platform. Everything is going great until they come to an area of the tunnel that's been flooded, forcing them to go the rest of the way on foot. Eventually, the only path forward is through a section where they'll have to go completely underwater. Being the smallest, Nora volunteers to check it out first, and the captain attaches a cable between their suits so that they can pull her out if anything goes wrong. It's definitely claustrophobic, but she manages to make it through without any trouble. So one by one, the others start following her path. Eventually, everyone makes it across, with only Paul being the last to go, but they quickly realize that something must have gone wrong when they hear him struggling over the radio. Worried, they start working together to pull him up, but he's snagged on something on the other end of the tunnel. Suddenly, his line snaps back as one of the creatures starts dragging him back under. Thinking quickly, they're able to get his helmet on at the last second so that he won't drown. But instead of fighting against them, the creature yanks his entire body right out through the leg of his suit, killing him in a bloody explosion while the others can't do anything but watch. That makes 2 down, with 4 more to go. All that the survivors can do is run for their lives deeper into the facility. They've now made it down to the midway station, a full 6.5 miles under the sea. The captain is still unable to reach anyone from the surface over the radio, while the others are just trying to wrap their heads around what the hell is even after them. They can see that the facility's 6,000-ton drill has been completely destroyed, and they can't imagine what kind of creature could be strong enough to cause that kind of damage. Oh, it won't be long before this entire station goes down next, and they have no choice but to keep going unless they want to die here. But there is a problem. At this point, Liam's oxygen scrubber is barely functional, and he most likely won't survive another extended walk outside. Still, the others aren't willing to leave him behind, so they'll have to help him cross the ocean floor one more time to reach the safety of the Roebuck station, where hopefully they'll find some escape pods. Okay, if they're going to make it to the Roebuck, then they should take a minute to get more prepared for this trip. First, let's start by taking care of Liam's damaged oxygen scrubber. For that, we're gonna need some spare parts. The creatures may have taken Paul, but they should have no use for his suit. There's a good chance that it's still somewhere out there in the tunnel, so I'd try getting the oxygen scrubber from Paul's suit to replace Liam's. You know, it could be dangerous to circle back to the scene of the crime, but so is going out into the water, which leads me to my next point. Why not get some more weapons? The nail gun seemed to work great, but some good melee weapons should get the job done too. This place is probably full of tools and construction type materials that they could use to put together a pretty formidable arsenal. Not to mention a bunch of science stuff if they want to get extra creative. I'd also want to outfit the suits with some defensive measures, starting by reinforcing vulnerable areas like the mask with some more durable materials that could hold up in combat. Sure, they didn't originally design these suits for battle, but there's no reason why we can't make some modifications now. Since we know that these creatures live in the deep sea, we should consider any special adaptations that they might have to help them survive in this environment, and how we can use those adaptations against them. The simplest place to start would be welding sharpened spikes to the suits to make us all harder to grab onto. Some deep-sea species have developed venom-injecting spines to protect themselves from predators. So, I'd also consider tipping our suit spikes with dangerous chemicals to give those freaks an extra dose of ouch. Similar to this, many species can release various types of irritating chemicals into the water if they're attacked. You could also use these materials in the same way that squids use their ink sac, creating a disorienting cloud around you to give you a chance to escape. From their encounter on the elevator, we can gather that the creatures seem to be attracted to light. This makes sense, as many deep-sea predators hunt bioluminescent prey and are often interested in the artificial lights produced by submersible and underwater drones. So, knowing this, perhaps they could whip up some portable light devices that would work as a distraction, like how a fighter jet uses decoy flares to counter heat-seeking missiles. I'd also try finding some darker paint for the suits so that they'll reflect less light and try to minimize the light that we use to navigate as much as possible. Unfortunately, technologies like infrared won't work very well this far underwater, so you're still going to have to use some artificial light to see where you're going. The good news here is that since these creatures' exposure to light is so low, it's very possible that they rely on other, stronger senses more so than their vision. For example, many deep-sea predators use electroreception when hunting, which is an adaptation that allows them to sense the natural electrical fields given off by other living things. It could be possible for the engineers to whip up an electrical field generator for our suit to overwhelm this sense and repel the creatures if they got too close. The same thing goes for sonar. Yeah, sonar. There's a good chance that these creatures are sensitive to acoustic signatures as another hunting strategy. For a counter, we could try creating a sonar device that works as a distraction, or a high-frequency sound emitter for the suits to disorient the creatures and drive them away. They need to consider all of their options to give themselves the best chances of winning the fight. As the crew sets out into the abyss once again, following a trail of markers towards the next station, Nora here is quickly hit with the unshakable feeling that something must be watching them. Sure enough, they catch a glimpse of one of the humanoid creatures stalking them from just out of sight, and it lunges towards Nora before quickly changing course and swimming away. Panicking, the crew shut off their lights, hoping that it will just go away. But the creature returns and drags Liam away into a tunnel created by the rubble, with the others not noticing until it's already too late. The captain immediately goes in after him, and he actually manages to find Liam in one piece. But when he decides to double back for the nail gun, the creature suddenly pulls him deeper in, dragging Nora along with them since she's still attached to his suit by the cable. The creature effortlessly pulls them both upwards until they crash into a floating light platform, with Nora landing safely on top of it while the captain is stuck dangling off from the side. Terrified, Nora crawls back over to the captain and starts trying to help him up. But just then, the creature returns for another attack, grabbing Nora's head in its massive jaws, as if it was trying to swallow her whole. The captain pulls himself up and attacks it with his diving knife, driving the creature away, but the fight sends them both free-falling back towards the depths below. Their suits can't handle such a rapid change in pressure, and if they keep falling this way, then they're both going to implode. Realizing what he has to do, the captain disengages the tether between their suits, sacrificing himself so that Nora can live. And that makes 3 down, with 3 more to go. When Nora wakes up, she finds that she's still a long way from safety. She's completely lost, can't reach anyone over the radio, and her oxygen supply is running critically low. While she's still trying to get her bearings, another bizarre squid-like creature lashes out at her, causing Nora to take off running aimlessly into the darkness. Pressing forward, she finally makes it to a familiar structure, the abandoned Shepherd Station, and is able to get inside. It's not exactly how she planned for things to go, but at least she's safe for now. Nora tries reaching out to Liam and Emily over the radio, but as we've come to expect by now, she never gets a response. Refusing to give up, she manages to repair her suit using pieces of a spare one that she finds on the station. After plotting out a course to the Roebuck with an old map and grabbing a high-powered flare gun to use as a weapon, she sets off one last time into the water, determined to reach the escape pods or die trying. Okay, before going back out there, I'd strongly suggest that Nora here gets her hands on some more weapons. The flare gun is a great start, but the problem is that she only has 2 shots. So I'd try bringing in a few makeshift spears along too. Stabby stabby. Since the creatures seem to attack by circling around to come at you from unexpected angles, I'd also want to use cover whenever possible as I was moving across the ocean floor. Now with that being said, there's not necessarily a need for Nora to rush it here. After all, we saw what happened to the last guy who tried to use an escape pod. Ouchies. As it stands, the creatures don't seem to know that she's here in the abandoned station. If she has anything to eat and drink, then she could definitely set herself up here at least for a while. She'd have plenty of time to home alone the place with defensive traps, and make herself some weapons just in case the creatures ever made it inside. Then all that's left to do is sit back and wait for this to all blow over. Who knows? Maybe someone else will come along and handle it, or the creatures will just leave and go back to sleep once they're done. Either way, it gives Nora more time to fix up her suit and let things cool off for a while, instead of rushing straight back out into the danger zone. As she's crossing the ocean floor, she starts to hear sporadic bursts of what sounds like Emily talking to herself over the radio. But the woman won't respond when Nora tries to call her. Finally, she finds Emily huddled over Liam's body. Somehow, Liam is still alive too, so they regroup and start dragging him the rest of the way. It's a long walk, but finally they make it within eyesight of the Roebuck station, and safety is just a few hundred yards away. For a moment, it looks like their luck is finally turning around, until suddenly they notice something incredibly strange. Between them and the entrance to the station is a massive nest of these bizarre creatures, but it seems like they're all hibernating in the disgusting algae. Turning off their lights, Nora and Emily start inching their way through dozens of sleeping monsters, until they're almost all the way through to the other side. Suddenly, Emily's oxygen alarm starts to go off, and she immediately becomes frozen with fear. Nora whispers for her to keep going just as the noise wakes up one of the creatures, and it lunges down at her from above, violently slamming Nora into the floor over and over again in an attempt to break through her dive suit. Nora is able to grab onto her flare gun just as the creature unhinges its jaws and starts swallowing her alive like a massive snake. She fires the flare gun up through its back, and the creature collapses to the ground dead as Nora fights her way back out of its body through the exit wound. The fight isn't over yet though, because now, even more of the creatures are starting to wake up. There are dozens of them about to rip her to shreds, but just as Nora is getting ready to fire her last shot, the creatures suddenly stop. From somewhere high above, she hears an enormous siren-like sound, and all of a sudden, the entire nest disappears up into the darkness. It turns out that the nest was part of a living creature. Firing up a flare, she's able to catch a glimpse of the enormous titan looming over her, and decides to do the only thing that someone can in a situation like this, which is run for her freaking life. The monster reaches down and slams its claw, causing a massive explosion that sends her flying back towards the station. When Nora finally wakes up again, Emily here is already dragging her to safety. They manage to make it into the airlock just in time, but Nora's helmet was damaged in the attack, and now she can't get it off, forcing Emily to smash the glass open with a fire extinguisher before she suffocates from a lack of oxygen. With Nora safe, Emily lifts Liam back up to his feet, and the two girls begin carrying him on their shoulders deeper into the station. They're desperately trying to find their way around, but the directory systems have all been damaged in the attack, leaving them more or less completely lost in here, with every second that goes by bringing them closer and closer to a horrific death. They're able to find a command center with a working computer, but as they look out through the observation window behind them, they can see the massive creature rising up out of the hole that was created by the drill. The monster begins tearing the station apart, cutting off their exits and leaving them with only one safe route to go. Finally, they're able to make it to the escape pods, and at first it looks like there might actually be enough to go around. Of course, that's just too good to be true, and while Liam and Emily are distracted, Nora realizes with horror that the only remaining pod took too much damage to get her out. Even after coming all this way, it looks like only two of them are going to survive. Okay, we've got 2 pods and 3 people. It's time to make some hard choices, and the way that I see it, there's 2 approaches that we could take here. Option 1 is to try to just fit 2 people into the same pod. It would be a tight fit, sure, but I mean, considering the alternative, it couldn't hurt to give it a shot. Now, option 2 is where things can get interesting. In this case, the moment that I saw that there were only 2 functioning pods, I would have immediately jumped into one of them without even letting the others know what was going on. After all, they don't get priority just because they're the happy couple. If you overthink it, then your conscience will tell you to do the heroic thing and sacrifice yourself. But from a purely survival standpoint, jumping in and sending yourself up without giving yourself too much time to think about it is really the only way. Plus, you don't want to end up in a fight over who should get to go. It'd be better to let Liam sacrifice himself for his lady than for me to sacrifice myself so that the 2 of them get to live happily ever after. Sorry, but after coming this far, I'm leaving this station, so either we're pairing up or one of them gets to stay behind. Instead of telling the others the truth, Nora lies that there are enough pods for all 3 of them as they launch him up towards the surface. Now it's Emily's turn, but before getting in, she realizes what Nora is trying to do. Devastated, Emily immediately starts arguing with her, desperately trying to find a way that they can all get out of there, but it's no use. It looks like Nora has already accepted her fate, and when she can't convince her friend with her words, she decides to sock Emily straight in the face, stunning her enough that she's able to force her into the last pod and send her up to safety too. They aren't home free yet though, because when the monster sees their escape pods whizzing by, it decides to send all of its smaller minions to track them down before they can reach the surface. Meanwhile, Nora sits in the center of the flooding room, quietly accepting that she's about to die. For a moment, one of the smaller creatures starts slamming on the windows, trying to get inside, but it disappears into the shadows when the enormous titan calls them all to go after the pods instead. But that's when Nora suddenly gets an idea. Nora uses the control panel to deactivate the station's cooling towers, causing the thermal core to begin melting down. Seconds later, the entire core erupts in a massive explosion that takes the creature with it, and Nora sacrificing herself so that her friends can survive. But the company that caused all of this covers the whole incident up. and nobody ever finds out the truth about what really happened down there. That makes 4 crewmates down with 2 survivors, and it's safe to say that they've learned a valuable lesson. Don't work for a company that's drilling in the depths of the Mariana Trench, because you never know when they might accidentally wake up Cthulhu. But what would you guys do? Honestly, you would never catch me down in the Mariana Trench unless I was going down there with a VIP access ticket on James Cameron's submarine with James Cameron. But that's just me, you know what I mean? I like the Terminator movies, and he likes the Mariana Trench. You know what I'm saying? He would be the best guide there is, but f*** all that. Let us know down in the comments what you would have done. Thank you so much for watching. What do you guys think of the new set, huh? Leave a like and subscribe, and check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. Have a damn good day while you're at it.